It's 1942, and all across the continent of Europe, filled with scores and scores of malnourished people, when the trains pulled away heading to southern Poland, their fates were sealed. From 1940 to 1945, the Nazis would use a retired army barracks in Oświęcim Poland for the factory killing of innocents all across occupied Europe. Join us on a brutal journey as we stare into the very minds and men responsible for one of the worst atrocities in human history, the Auschwitz executioners. Prepare for the shock and horror of mangled medical science abuses, perverse minds planning mass murder, and those who simply took pleasure in it. The institutional factory killing of the Nazi regime would cost some 17 to 19 million lives, and some 6 million European Jewish lives were extinguished within. Situated some 50 kilometers southwest of Krakow, Auschwitz stood as a previously used Polish army barracks and camp for migrant workers in World War I. Approximately 400 meters wide and some 1,000 meters long, the site was made up of 22 brick buildings, with nearly half being 2 stories. The Nazis would take an eye on the site in February of 1940, with the inspector of the security police, Arpad Wigand, suggesting it be used as a quarantine camp for Polish prisoners. Just 2 months later, SS head Heinrich Himmler would approve the site for Nazi purposes. Rudolf Hoss would be appointed the camp's first commandant. The first arrivals at the camp were 30 prisoners a month after, on the 20th of May. The first camp prisoner was Bruno Brodniewicz, given the serial number 1, and given the dubious label of Lageraltesta, camp elder. German career criminals were also transported among the Polish arrivals as political prisoners. These career criminals were given green triangles on their uniforms and were more or less there to make the life of any Polish prisoner hell. Already just a month into its running, with commandants, political prisoners, sadism, serial numbers, and triangles on uniforms, a historic atrocity was well underway. Come June 1940, the first mass transport would arrive, comprising political prisoners, many being Catholic priests and Jews. Some 728 Polish men arrived from Tarnow, Poland, and were branded with serial numbers. Arrival at Auschwitz would typically entail being branded with a given serial number, disinfected, shaved, and clothed in the infamous striped uniform. For the inmates, this indignity was an unknowing brush of brief fortune. Many were not even registered. Many were sent straight to the gas chambers. For registration, inmates arrived at the Prisoner Reception Center, which stands to this day as the Auschwitz-Birkenau State Museum Reception Center. During its Nazi usage, it contained laundry, a bathhouse, and 19 gas chambers for the delousing of prisoners' clothes. As 1940 drew to a close, a 40-kilometer squared area around the camp had been confiscated by the Nazis. This Interessengebiete, zone of interest, was continually patrolled by local police, Gestapo, and SS guards. By the spring of the following year, over 10,000 inmates were imprisoned at Auschwitz, and there would be no escape. On January 20, 1942, the most senior of the Nazi Party and SS leaders would meet for the Wannsee Conference. This day would mark a turning point in history, a point in time in which humanity could never look at itself the same again. Gathered by Reinhard Heydrich, the purpose of the meeting was to decide the fate of the Jewish population of Europe under Nazi control. Across the evening, Heydrich outlined a plan to deport all Jewish prisoners in occupied Europe to be transported to concentration camps for their murder. By this time, extermination had been an avenue explored at Auschwitz. In August 1941, under the auspices of Rudolf Hoss, Soviet prisoners were murdered with the use of Zyklon B poison gas. Less than a month later, a morgue-turned-gas chamber was used to kill hundreds of prisoners at a time using this method. A crematorium had been constructed at Auschwitz I, which wasn't even built for mass murder. Its construction started in July 1940. Yet just 2 years later, barely weeks before the Wannsee Conference, the crematorium, capable of burning over 300 bodies in under a day. The first transport of the final solution is debated, but Rudolf Hoss would write, its beginning was in the spring of 1942. It was during this year that Auschwitz II and its gas chamber was fully operational. The number of inmates killed at Auschwitz's total 40 extermination camps totals over 1.3 million people. Their loss can never be forgotten. So, who were the perpetrators of this grand crime and historical atrocity? Those assigned to Auschwitz were as much overseers as they were executioners. They were members of the SS, the Schutzstaffel, and considered members of the Nazi Party under Adolf Hitler. These individuals would be responsible for carrying out horrific acts of genocide, including mass shootings, lethal injection, and the use of gas chambers. Otto Moll was a master sergeant of the SS who served in the Auschwitz and Majdanek concentration camps during World War II. He gained an intimidating reputation for brutal, ruthless behavior. He would be marked in the history books for his involvement in the mass extermination of people, especially during his time at Auschwitz. Born in 1915, Moll joined the SS in 1935 and was posted to Auschwitz in 1941. Initially, he was assigned as the supervisor of the forced labor detail working in the camp's fish farm and agricultural holdings. Some 3 years later, in 1944, Moll became the supervisor of all crematoria in Auschwitz II, Birkenau. From there, he would be directly involved in the final solution, the Nazi plan to exterminate Jews. He personally carried out executions and was known for his cruelty. It is reported that he participated in the selection of prisoners for the gas chambers, and he is infamous for his deranged cruelty shown across the atrocities. Otto Moll is recounted in several testimonies as having an astonishing murder lust for young people. One such account details Moll taking a youngster from his mother's arms before dropping him in the boiling fat of incinerated inmates. Other accounts dictate Moll luring youngsters with sweets, only to take them to a pit of fire and throw them in. Survivor accounts continually state Moll would relish such depravity, to the point of making him chuckle with laughter. After the evacuation of Auschwitz, Moll was transferred to the Majdanek concentration camp, and later to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, where he remained until the end of the war. After the war, Otto Moll was captured by the Allies. He was tried by the U.S. military in the Dachau trials, found guilty of war crimes, and was executed by hanging in 1946. His grim actions at Auschwitz and other camps mark him as one of the most notorious figures in the history of the Holocaust. A name you will have continually heard throughout this video, Rudolf Hoss, was a SS officer who would face death by hanging 2 years after the war ended. His role in the atrocities of Auschwitz cannot be understated. He was the longest-serving commandant of the site and was responsible for the implementation of the attempt to exterminate the Jewish population of Europe. Chillingly, Hoss, once appointed commandant, saw Auschwitz as a great career opportunity, determined to make the concentration camp the most efficient under any Nazi control. Such a zealot for the work, Hoss lived at the concentration camp with his wife in Villa. In his inhuman drive to make Auschwitz the most powerful tool in the final solution, Hoss was an innovator in death. It was he that would introduce Zyklon B and its use in gas chambers. Quite astoundingly, Hoss's murderous record hit its zenith towards the end of World War II. On the 8th of May 1944, he would even have a leg of this genocide named after him. On this day, Operation Hoss began at Auschwitz. Rudolf Hoss would oversee the transportation of some 430,000 Hungarian Jews to the concentration camp complex. Under his watch, they were killed in just 56 days. A man forever to be known as the Angel of Death, Josef Mengele was an SS officer who took his specialty as a physician to conduct experiments on the defenseless inmates of Auschwitz. In 1937, Mengele joined the Nazi Party before serving as a battalion medical officer at the opening of the war. It was in 1943 that Mengele was assigned to the fully operational Auschwitz, where his perverse medical mind was given free roam. At the camp, he went from medical personnel to essentially a man playing God with no sense of morality or humanity. During his tenure, he would make a visit per week to the hospital barracks at Auschwitz. Under his orders, any prisoner who had made no recovery in under 2 weeks was to be sent to the gas chambers. Mengele was also key in deciding who would be sent to the gas chambers and who would be taken aside for medical experiments. Mengele was given a grant from the Nazi government to build his own laboratory at Auschwitz II. There, he conducted a series of chilling medical experiments that were regularly deadly. His fixations with identical twins, dwarfism, differing eye colors, and any physical abnormality were all pathways to eventual murder. Mengele's primary fascination was with twins, with many commenting that his fixation was with the potential of Nazi Germany producing more twins in the Aryan supremacist mold. Nevertheless, The medical experiments were devoid of any consideration for pain or human suffering. Mengele is routinely described as cold and without empathy. He would remove the limbs from twins with no medical recourse, would inject them with diseases, or commit pointless blood transfusions between them. Multiple victims of this treatment would die. Worst of all, Josef Mengele evaded capture by the authorities after the war and never faced trial. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.